Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. I'm Jim, joined by Brian and Jack. Jack, it is your first time on a Draft Professor podcast, as best as I can recall. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to chatting through some receivers. Should be fun.
Yeah. And Brian, I think this is our first Sunday podcast. So thank you for asking to do Sundays. How's everything going out on the left coast?
Not bad. Weather's actually not too hot. It's like, I don't know, 80s, 90s, something like that today. So for here, it's not bad. We just got back from our vacation a few days ago, so doing good.
Fantastic. So we are going to be discussing the top 20 wide receivers for Jack and Brian. And we're basically going to split the podcast in half. The first half of the podcast, Jack is going to talk about the players he has in his top 20 that Brian does not. And Brian has 10 receivers in his top 20 that Jack does not. So we're actually going to focus on the players that are different first. And then after we do that, we'll do the rankings so everybody can hear the top 5. And I don't want to be any news breaking, but they have the same exact top 3. So there may not be a lot of difference up at the top, but there's definitely a lot of difference in the top 20. So Jack's graphic is to the right. Brian's graphic is to the left. Jack's graphic is to the left. Brian's graphic is to the right. There's 10 here. There's 10 on another page. Jack, one of the first receivers that you had, I believe, that Brian did not was Chris Bell from Louisville. So do you want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So he was actually the last guy I watched. And he was a pleasant surprise. The size is there. So he's 6'2", 220. So you've got that kind of NFL ready build. I actually watched him after watching Nick Harbour, who obviously anyone who knows anything about Nick Harbour, he's like a track guy, ran a 10-100 100 meters. And I was watching that tape, not to kind of go too much into Harbour at the moment, but I was like, where's that speed? And then I watched Chris Bell and was like, oh, here's a big guy. He can run fast. So he's got that kind of size and speed that I really like at the position, really explosive. He's really good after the catch. This is not a comp because this is way too lofty, but there is that kind of like AJ Brown element of like big guy who is a good creator after the catch. Louisville used him kind of on designed touches as well as kind of working him down the field as well. He's got the speed to threaten vertically as well, so I think he can be a 3-level threat at the next level. There's definitely room to clean up some technique, but I think, as is always the case with kind of summer scouting rankings, there's a bit of development baked in to where I've got him. I think there's things like false steps in his releases that you'd like to see cleaned up, hands at the line, dealing with press. But you'd hope that with another year, he will be kind of in a position to take that next step.
Okay. And Brian, one of the receivers that you had that Jack didn't have was Malik Rutherford. You want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, he's just another one of those kind of, it seems to be like Georgia Tech likes these type of guys, these kind of smaller kind of slot guys. I think he plays mostly on the outside for Georgia Tech right now, but he projects to be more of a slot guy. It's just another guy I like. Seems to be a class full of slot type guys. Like I said, small. He's like 5'9", 170 pounds. So of course he's going to play in the slot. I think. Sorry, let me mess up here real quick. Yeah, slot. Yeah, he's been a little inconsistent at times, but I think it's the talent's there. So of course, just be a solid slot receiver. He's got good speed, good hands. Route running could be a little bit better. His route release is pretty good, but still, of course, going to improve that as well. Just could improve everything all around. But just another kind of small, fast kind of slot guy that can fit in that role in the NFL. I think you could probably teach him to return. I don't think he has any return experience, but I think he can even do some of that stuff too as well.
Okay. And then the next player that Jack has that was not on Brian's board was wide receiver Nick Anderson. So, Jack, you want to cover Nick Anderson for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, former Oklahoma receiver, now with LSU. He's 6'4", 210. So, again, there's maybe a type here from my side that I like. So, I mean, the thing that a lot of people will know about Anderson, which is maybe why I don't think he'll get a ton of hype, is he missed almost all of 2024 with a quad injury. So in terms of the tape you're watching, you're going to be going back to 2023. But I think there was quite a lot there that is good. He's got that kind of ex-receiver frame. He's really explosive. Like for a guy who's 6'4", he's not a kind of, I don't think he's a long strider. I do think there is that short area explosiveness. He's averaged over 20 yards per catch throughout his career. So he is a true kind of big play threat outside the numbers, kind of vertical weapon. But he's also pretty good after the catch as well. Again, another guy who's got good contact balance, good acceleration. So there is the caveat here of how he comes back from the injury is a big thing here. You could see this going either way, but he's in a good system in terms of LSU with Garrett Nussmeier to, I think, play well in 2025. But I'm again just hoping that the player we see in 25 is kind of like the player we saw in 2023, and that's why I've got him at 7.
And that was Nick Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Brian, the next receiver on your list was Bryce Lance, and Jack, I think you know Anthony Russo. So Anthony's already retweeted the podcast. So Anthony, good to see that. But Brian, you're going to cover Bryce Lance, and I know this is one of Anthony's guys, but
yeah,
Anthony was disappointed Bryce Lance didn't make Jack's list.
I saw that. Yeah, he was very sad.
But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So of course, as most people know, that's Bryce Lance is the brother of Trey Lance, the former number 3 overall pick or whatever it was. That the 49ers gave up tons of picks for basically did nothing. But yeah, so I think his upside is, how do I say it? His upside is better than his brother's. Again, somewhat similar size. He's 6'3". He has good long arms. He does run a little bit stiff, like his upper body's a little stiff when he's running. But he has definitely good deep speed. I don't think it's great. I don't think he's like Watson fast. He's not going to run 4.36 or whatever. But I think 4.45 something like that. But he's good speed. He can get deep on those pretty easily on those FCS guys. He's a good blocker. He's not great, but he's a good blocker. They list him at 204, but he looks pretty small and thin. He looks closer to me to about 190, 185. So I think he needs to add some weight and some strength. But the upside is there for sure for him to be a really good, I think, number 2 receiver. I don't know about number 1, but there's just a lot of stuff he needs to work on. Again, like we've talked about before, this is kind of a projection for me, at least a bit. It's not purely based on film, because if it was purely based on film, he would have been a lot lower on my list. Because he just needs a lot more work. His release package, he has basically almost no release package coming off the line. He just basically runs straight, or runs his route, basically doesn't do anything. No releases. And then so he has some inside out fakes he's attempted, but they didn't look very good. They look kind of too robotic. Looked a bit robotic trying. So again, that's going to need a lot worse work. His routes need work, of course. When it's like, for example, when he would run an out route, he tended to kind of veer and cut, like not make it. He kind of rounded out his outs. They weren't sharp and stuff like that, for example. But he does have really good hands. Doesn't drop anything. Catches with the hands away from his body. He's got quick feet. Actually, he can stop on a dime. He actually, what's really stood out to me on film was his whip routes. He runs really good whip routes for a guy that's 6'3". So you can see he's got the quick feet. He's got the agility for a guy his size. He just needs a lot of work. So he's even been used on some gadget stuff by North Dakota State, kind of similar to Watson has been. And then, but I just think, yeah, he's like probably a couple years away. He's not a big yak guy. They used him sometimes on some handoffs, but he didn't look natural doing it. Didn't look right doing it. You can probably use him on some end rounds, but I wouldn't give him snaps in the backfield and have him carry the ball like a running back. But you can do stuff like that with him. But he will fight his way back for the quarterback. So on scramble drills, he looked good doing that stuff. Or at least he has some awareness with that. But yeah, just off his film, he looks like he's probably like 2 years away from being a significant contributor.
And Jack, the next player you have is Deion Burks from Oklahoma. And we have covered him a few times on the channel already. I would love to hear what you have on Deion Burks.
Yeah, so I first came across him last summer in summer scouting when he had transferred from Purdue to Oklahoma. I really liked his tape at Purdue. I thought when he was there, he was playing primarily as a boundary receiver. I think like 90% or something of his snaps in 2023 were on the boundary. Now he obviously went to Oklahoma last year. That saw him shift into the slot. I mean, he's built like a slot receiver, right? He's 5'9", 181, so he's not a big guy. I mean, he's like serious athlete. Brian is the measurables and testing guy, so he'll know this better than me. But I seem to think he's got an official 40 time of, I think it's 4.3 something. So he is sub 4.4. So he's like a legit burner, can win deep. As you'd expect for a smaller receiver like that, he's really twitchy and really difficult to stick with in single coverage. There's some good kind of route nuance in terms of you see in various tempo, target blind spots, manipulating DBs through the stem, all of which is really good. And yes, he's smaller, but you see the active hands, which, that's kind of what you want to see. You're never going to get a big contested catch guy there, but the hands are good. I think the reason he's maybe, a little lower than some of the other guys on the list is really that kind of NFL projection. Where does he play? Is he slot only? Like I say, at Purdue, he did play outside. The play strength worries me a little. I think he's best in the slot. You might get him on the boundary as a Z, but you need him off the line because I don't see a guy who's going to win consistently against press. And he does get knocked about a bit through the stem if he's playing against more physical DBs. But again, another guy who was hit with injuries last year. So I clearly like the guys who are injured. But you'd hope with a fully healthy season and an Oklahoma offense that surely won't be as banged up and that much of a mess in 2025, you'd hope to see an uptick back to the kind of production we saw at Purdue.
Yeah. So just to give the audience a little bit of context. So if you go back, if anybody watching this podcast goes back, we covered everybody on Oklahoma that we project to be in the draft. And we spent a lot of time on Burks. What Jack just shared is exactly what I heard, right? Everybody's saying that like it's a slot or a Z. But the biggest difference to me was how people project it to the draft. So one person said that's early day 2. The other 3 people said they're not going to touch Burks until day 3, based on what they see already. So I think Burks is a player we want to keep our eye on because if he's healthy, I think he's going to move up significantly. I think that would be my assessment. But I think it's a recovery from injury projection. I think that would explain why he's where he is on the board right now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So Brian, the next player that you have that was not on Jack's board was CJ Daniels. You want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, another guy that I've been on since probably 2022 or something like that. His sophomore year at Liberty, he really flashed. Didn't put up great numbers, but if you watch the film, he really stood out. I think he had like maybe 500 yards or something like that. But yeah, he's kind of similar to, well, no, actually, that's different. Sorry. So he dealt with injuries in 2023. He tore his ACL like in the spring. And so he missed most of 2023. And then he transferred to LSU last year. And he just, whatever reason, he struggled. He couldn't really, I don't know if it was the offense he wasn't understanding or he wasn't getting down or it it wasn't a good fit for him or what. I'm not sure. But if you go back and watch his 2023 film, he's really good deep threat. 6'2", over 200 pounds. Looks like he could probably run 4.4 flat, if at least back then before he blew out his knee. So yeah, he's got some talent. He's got some talent for sure. He looked really well. Played really well. And yeah, he's just like a really good deep threat. I liked his film a lot. He's strong. He's really good blocker. He just really needs to get healthy. He needs to get back to his 2023 form. Hopefully he can do that this year. With Miami, sorry. And yeah, he's just a guy. I think he's a really good deep threat. He could be although not exactly the same skill set, I think he could be an MVS type player in the league. You can be your deep, your number 3 guy who you just send him on posts and deeps and digs and all that type of stuff, or not digs, fades and all that type of stuff. But he's a good blocker, so I think he has some similarities to MVS. I wouldn't say he's as stiff as MVS was, so I think he can do a little more intermediate stuff with him as well. But I think he can be that type of player.
Okay, thank you. So, Jack, next player that you have that was not on Brian's board is Evan Stewart for Oregon, which is injured right now. You want to talk about Evan Stewart for a little bit?
Yeah, so I ended up I graded him. I did my summer scouting on him before the injury. So there is going to be the question about whether he comes out in the 26th class. I wouldn't be surprised if he returns. But this is a former 5-star. I can't remember if he was a top 10 recruit, but if he wasn't, he was very close to a top 10 recruit in his class. 6 foot, 175, track athlete, like a serious track athlete. I think in high school, ran track, competed in long jump, triple jump, maybe the high jump as well. It was all sorts. He's seriously quick, as you'd expect for a guy with that kind of background. Twitchy as well. He's not just a kind of linear athlete. He moves well. He sinks well in his breaks. He's I'd say a fairly natural separator. There's also some good nuance in his releases. You see him kind of attack DBs in different ways to create separation, not just with his athleticism. I think a lot of those guys who have profiled similarly to Stewart with that kind of frame and track background will just rely on their speed, and they'll be kind of, lacking nuance, which always makes you worry projecting them to the NFL level. But you see it with Stewart, and I think he also has really good hands. And body control is brilliant. There's some real kind of highlight reel plays on his tape. The concern is obviously the injury. The frame, I think, he needs, I think, more like say 175. You're going to need to be adding some mass to that. And then there's going to be the question of, okay, if you add much more mass, what does that do to the speed and the quickness that is kind of his selling point? He's weirdly not a great yak threat, which for a guy who's that athletic and that twitchy is strange. And there have been focus drops. As good as his hands are, like, he'll catch things that he has no right to catch, and then there'll be a unbelievably easy target that is just dropped for no apparent reason. So there's a consistency point there. But I think, I think if I was a betting man, I'd say he'd probably be more likely to come out in 2027. But I'm keeping him here while he's still eligible and until we know differently.
And I think that's fair. Do we know if Stewart has the possibility to come back for a bowl game? Are we going to see him play at all this year?
I don't know. It sounds like he's out. I think, was it a patella tendon? I think it was. I want to say that's what it was. He suffered torn patella tendon, which, I mean, may be back for the bowl, but it might just be that if that's all he's coming back for, he's probably not coming out. So it might just be that he spends the time rehabbing. But yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a shame because I thought he could be a real riser this year. But obviously, if we do see him, it's going to be in limited outings.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I took him off my board, because the injury. So I was like,
Yeah.
So, Brian, the next receiver that you have is a different Louisville wide receiver, Colin Lacey. You want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, it's another one of my hashtag my guys. So when he was at South Alabama in 2023, he became well, actually, it was full-time starter in 22, but 2023 was kind of his breakout year. He had 1,300 yards playing out of the slot and a little bit outside, but mostly out of the slot. Again, another funny, oddly enough, another kind of small slot guy. I actually have verified measurements on him, 5'8", 192. So he's kind of a small, thick guy, but he's fast. Projected run in the 4.45 range. Again, another guy that's gonna he's got, he's gonna be your slot fades. You can use him with slot fades. He's a good route runner. He's got good releases. He just missed most of this past season with an injury. He played I think 4 games, and then he redshirted. So yeah, he's a little smaller guy, so you're not gonna be able to do certain things with him. But I mean, just because of his route running, his speed, his hands, he's got really good hands. His run off the catch, he's fast, he's quick. You can do all those kinds. You can use him in gadget type stuff. You can probably even teach him to return as well. He's just really versatile weapon in your offense that I think could do a lot of damage. And of course, like I said, you can use him in the slot, use him with slot fades to beat those cover threes or whatever. So yeah, I think he can be a really good slot receiver in the NFL.
And then, Jack, your next player is Zachariah Branch from Georgia. And I'll say right now, I think Branch is going to be one of the fastest risers on this list. If he plays to where people think he's capable of playing, he's probably a top 50 player. But that's a projection. If somebody has him in the top 50, it's probably a projection. But what do you want to say about wide receiver Zachariah Branch from Georgia, Jack?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. So obviously, again, another former 5-star who I think is one. Sometimes, for me at least, when you go into summer scouting, there are guys that you maybe don't have a well-developed opinion on, and there are others that you feel like quite a lot about, whether it's just through watching college ball or their recruiting background. Branch was obviously a real high-profile recruit, played at USC, so you expect, okay, this guy's going to be, there were people making the Tyreek Hill comps when he was kind of coming out of high school, which is always stupid. But that does lead to some hype. And there was an element of it where I turned on the tape and I was like, oh, okay. Is this what we've got? Now, obviously, for a former 5-star, you're getting certain things. You're getting elite athleticism. He is incredibly explosive, and he is really twitchy. He's got that stop-start ability that can really be used kind of in the short and intermediate areas. What kind of surprised me, though, was you'd think a guy who is this quick would be a useful producer downfield, but he has 5 receptions of 20-plus yards in his career, which for a guy with that kind of speed that you think is a take the top off the defense type of player, left me a little disappointed. Now, he's a really good returner. He returns kickoffs and punts. So there is going to be a home for him in the NFL, even if it is just as a returner. He's small, so he's 5'10", 175, and he plays small. So you are talking about, in my opinion anyway, a slot-only receiver at the next level. But there is just that part of me that thinks, okay, the athleticism is there. You need to see development as a route runner. He is one of those guys. I said with Stewart, you sometimes get those hyper athletic guys who are one-speed route runners who don't really kind of vary tempo. Branch is one of those. He's really quick, but that's kind of the only way he really knows to win. Now, you'd hope that with a bit more development, he's only a true junior, so there is that scope to develop. So I'm baking in a little bit of that here. But I think even at 14, maybe it's a bit lower than I thought I would be going into the process, personally.
Okay. Thank you. So, and I like it when multiple people cover a player, in this case, Zachariah Branch, and I hear it's the same report. The only difference is do you consider it top 100, or is he just a guy until he proves it on film and on the field? So it's refreshing for me when I can start to, let's say, hear the same scouting report on players from different people I respect. So, Brian, the next player in your list was Dane Key. You want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah, so he's 6'2.5", 206. He from Nebraska. He just transferred over from Kentucky. I know his former teammate had a lot more hype, but I think Dane Key was the better player. Not overly explosive, but he's physical. He plays hard. He has very aggressive mentality. He has long arms, almost 33-inch arms. But he's just a very natural receiver. Again, not particularly explosive, not particularly fast, but not slow, like average-ish speed. But just, and he actually was their best receiver last year, even though that offense, just the passing game really struggled last year. So, he had like over 700 yards. So, good, like, as a good blocker, physical player, just a guy who will give you everything. He'll play hard for you. He'll do everything. He's a good route runner. Not elite, of course, anything, but just solid all around. Could be a good number 2 receiver in the NFL. He'll probably even play special teams for you if you need him to. Just a guy who will just do everything you want him to do. Physical, good hands too. Actually, too, doesn't really drop anything. Will play run over the go over the middle, take hits over the middle. Runs good routes. Just an overall solid player, but just not really going to be your explosive guy that's going to get 40-yard catches and break off, break tackles and all that type of stuff. But just a solid all-around receiver.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. The next player that you have is Kevin Coleman. Want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah. So Coleman is now with Missouri. It looks like the guy who's going to be taking on the Luther Burden role there. He's had a bit of a journey through college football, so he's only a true senior. So he started his career at Jackson State under Dion. Then he went to Louisville. And then last year he was at Mississippi State. And now he's at Missouri. So 4 teams in 4 years, which, I mean, I don't know if there's anything to read into that, but it's interesting anyway. What I like about Coleman is he's smooth, fluid route runner. You see nuance to his game in that aspect. He's really good after the catch, I think, as well. So he forced 26 missed tackles last season. So he is a kind of slippery after the catch player. Now so you can see where he will fit in that Missouri offense in the Burden role. Now he's not doesn't have the frame that Burden had. He's, I think, 5'11", 180, so he's a little bit smaller. Again, like a few of the guys we've listed, that comes with the strength limitations and playing through contact issues. He's also been almost entirely a slot player in college. So we've not really seen him play much outside. Again, he's probably a slot in the NFL, to be honest, but he's got the kind of route savvy, twitch, yak ability that makes you think he can thrive there in the NFL. A couple of things that I didn't like, and I don't know if I was just being unnecessarily picky, but I mean his effort as a blocker it's not a massive thing when you're talking about a smaller slot receiver, but just actually try, and he doesn't, and the effort really irritates me. I don't know if I've just been watching too many Packers games over the year, and the value they put into it, and it's kind of rubbed off on me. But he also takes plays off as a receiver as well. So you'll see him kind of, if he knows he's not either the primary read or secondary read, he's just kind of very lackadaisical, not really putting much stress on the DB. But the talent is there. And he's a good returner as well. He's, again, kickoff returner, punt returner, loads of experience there. So there's something to like. I just think this is going to be an interesting one to see what he's like at Missouri, because There's been flashes at the other 3 spots, but it's just putting it all together consistency-wise now.
So, Brian, I figured it out. So, like right before the podcast, I was figuring out who did Jack have different, who did Brian have different. Jack had 10, Brian had 9. It's because I need to learn how to count. So, Brian, Eric McAllister of TCU.
Oh, you didn't have McAllister. Okay.
He was the missing player.
Oh, gotcha. So I was looking at your list. I was like, I'm assuming McAllister. Okay, that's fine. So McAllister, 6'3", 205. Again, TCU, he was a Boise State transfer. He had almost 1,000 yards, I believe. Let me check my notes real quick. I think he did actually when he was at Boise. But anyway, so he looked really good at Boise State when they transferred to TCU, where we all know they had probably 5 NFL level receivers this past season. So he didn't put up huge numbers, but I think he's got some really good talent. I think he's going to blow up this year, actually becoming a full-time starter, basically. He had 873 yards and 23 at Boise. So he really flashed at Boise, but of course, like I said, there was about 5 different receivers there that they were always rotating with at TCU. So if you look at snaps, weren't very high. So of course the targets weren't very high. Of course he flashed on films. He's a good receiver, long arms. Like I said, 6'3", 205. And he looks like he could probably add on another 10 pounds. Nice. He is definitely better than Savion. So he at least knows how to catch the ball and how to judge the ball in the air. So he's not going to, stop 10 yards short of a ball. But again, good hands, good route runner. Could improve at his route releases, but he's a good overall route runner. He can run any route you ask him to do. And playing at TCU, he's a good blocker because they asked you better block at TCU. He's just a long, tall, physical guy. Could add some weight. Pretty good speed, I would say. I would guesstimation. I'd probably say 4.48, 4.47, something like that. So just under 4.45. He can stack DBs even though he's not super fast. He can still stack DBs and get some deep catches on them. He's physical. He'll break some tackles, not a lot, but he'll break some. He can get some yard after catch a little bit here and there. He's not super bendy or anything like that, but he'll break some tackles here and there. Just a really good receiver, probably number 2 receiver in the NFL. Just solid overall. I really like him. I really hope he shows some improvement this year. If he shows improvement this year, he can really move up.
Okay. So, Jack, your next player is Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, and we have covered Alabama on this station. I believe it was last week. If you heard Jeremy Bernard gets comped to Emeka Egbuka, do you see it or are you running away from the comp?
So there's elements of it that I see. I think what they have in common, it's kind of similar size profiles first and foremost. Really good hands. I think if there's something about Bernard that I'm selling myself on is that he has, I don't know if they're the best hands in the class. They're probably not the best, but they're in the conversation for me. I think just really soft, active, reliable over the middle of the field. There's the route running nuance there, which again he shares with Egbuka. You see a guy who understands the craft of the position and how to manipulate defenders, how to kind of create space beyond what his athleticism allows. I think where I see a difference is the speed. It's the athleticism. I think my concern with Bernard and the reason he's a little lower for me is I don't see a guy who is going to reliably stack and win downfield. And I think the worry there then comes that if DBs aren't worried about your vertical speed, they can kind of sit on those underneath routes a little more. He's tough after the catch, which I do like. And I think that's maybe something he does better than Egbuka. I think he's really quick to transition after making the catch, getting upfield, and he's got good contact balance to kind of churn out those yards. The athleticism is what caps the ceiling for me. And obviously there's only so much he can improve on there. So he feels to me like a high floor guy who could be a real nice kind of depth piece in an NFL passing game, but not a guy I want to build my passing game around.
Yeah, and one of the other things that was said is Bernard is a wide receiver 2, and that was one of the reasons he got the Egbuka comp. He'll be forever a wide receiver 2 and never a wide receiver 1.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Brian, the next player that you have on your list was Andrel Anthony from Duke. You want to talk about him for a little bit?
Yeah. So another guy that transferred with Duke and transferred Duke had an injury last year. Didn't really play much last year. So for Duke, he transferred over from Oklahoma. He originally started out at Michigan. He transferred away from Michigan after his first 2 years, I believe it is, because he kind of got buried in the depth chart one of those type of things. And then he actually was starting at 2023. 2023. He was starting 2023 before he got injured, but he really showed a lot of flashes in those games. He started to hit over almost 500 yards in like 6 games or something like that. So, and right before he got injured, he was really showing flashes of a really good player. He could really separate from defensive backs, but he basically didn't play this past season. He played like all of 8 snaps. So basically redshirted this past season. So I don't have official measurements on him, but he's projected to be about 6 foot, about 183, 185 pounds. Projected to run like 4.45, which sounds about right to me. He's fast. He's got good hands. The only thing I just worry about, main thing I worry about with him physically at least, is his frame. Projected to be about 6 foot, 183 pounds, like I said, and he doesn't look like he put on a lot more weight. It's got a kind of a small frame, small waist, and stuff like that. So, and he does kind of struggle sometimes with physicality. So that's something that he's going to work on. If he can fix it, if he can improve it. Sometimes you get those small frame receivers, and it is what it is. Like, they can't, as big as they can get, as strong as they can get, they can't really improve a super lot as far as, dealing with press and physicality, and the routes and stuff like that. But hopefully he can, because that is the one thing he struggles with. But when he gets a free release, he's gone. He's got moves. He's got really good feet. He's really quick and on his breaks. He's got a ton of route releases. He's got his route running could be better, but he's got really good route releases. He's put a couple DBs in the spin cycle, so to speak. But he's got good hands, like I said, and he just needs to get healthy and stay healthy, and just improve as a route runner. Show he can add some weight, get a little bit stronger against press, getting off press, stuff like that. And getting better at hand fighting. He needs to get better at that, and then getting just staying healthy, like I said, and then there's one other thing. What was I thinking of? Improve his route running. I think I said that. Just improve overall, and just show he can stay healthy.
Okay. And Jack, the next player on your list was Aaron Anderson from LSU. And just as a teaser, on Monday, which would be tomorrow, we are covering the entire LSU draft class live, 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday. But Jack, give us a preview of what other people will be saying about Aaron Anderson from LSU.
Yeah, so for me, I think the kind of concise way of describing Anderson is he's a slightly less athletic, I mean, still very athletic, but slightly less athletic version of Zachariah Branch. Their strengths and weaknesses to me are pretty similar in that they are athletic, they're twitchy, they're both good returners. So Anderson had a 100-yard kick return against Oklahoma last year. His hands are good when they're kind of within the strike zone, but then you start to see those weaknesses come up when they're dealing with physicality, when the catch point there's kind of contact. Again, another player who I think has room to develop as a technician through the route, very much a kind of one speed, lacking tempo, variation type of route runner. So similar to Branch in many ways, and that's true, the strengths and the weaknesses. But like I said, that I'd still say he's a good athlete. I just don't have him in that kind of rare tier that Branch is, which is why they are a few spots apart for me.
Thank you. And Brian, the next on your list would be Eugene Wilson III from Florida. And ironically, we're going to be covering the Florida draft class. I believe it's 2 weeks from Tuesday. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So again, like we talked about in other podcasts, this is a combination of this projection, I should say, is a combination of projection and film watching because so far his film hasn't been great, but he's shown flashes. So Wilson, he actually has NFL bloodlines. His dad played in the NFL, obviously. His dad was Eugene Wilson II. So he's 5'10", 183 pounds, or 89 pounds, sorry. And he's fast. He's probably 4'4". He'll probably run 4'4" if he comes out. But yeah, he played really off the jump. He had a really good freshman year, for a freshman at least. He showed a lot of talent and skills. But he just kind of had some struggles this past season. Didn't play as well. Kind of just, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but just didn't play as well. But small guy, probably going to be a slot in the NFL, and he's still young, so there's a good chance he may go back because I believe I have him as a redshirt sophomore. But at least the talent's there. He's fast. Hands could be better, and of course route running could improve. But the upside and talent's definitely really high. If he goes back, he could end up being probably like an early day 2, late day 1 type of pick. It depends on what happens. Like I said, it's mostly a projection with his talent, his skills, and his upside. If he has a big year this year, he could really move up and then potentially come out. Like I said, the talent's there for him to go in the first round. It's just he needs to get there fully instead of kind of showing little flashes here and there and being inconsistent and stuff like that. Route running, like I said, needs to develop some route releases, of course. Blocking is not great. Definitely needs to be better. He doesn't show a lot of drive to be a good blocker, but you never know. Sometimes those things change. Guys can improve on that and fix that. So, for him, that's kind of a projection.
Okay, so Jack, your last two, these will be interesting because we've talked about both on the channel a lot. So J. Michael Sturdivant from Florida, I know that Bill Sparks thinks that's a first round or round 1-2 top 50 type player. What do you like about Sturdivant that he made your list for the top 20?
I think for me, it's a combination of probably 3 things. One is the size. So he's 6'3", 216. So he's got that kind of boundary receiver build that a lot of the guys on my list seem a bit smaller. So he does have that size that he brings to the table. He does have a background as a track athlete, which I do think you see when he kind of works the vertical tree. And he tracks the ball really well. He is a really good kind of jump ball receiver, back shoulder fade type receiver. I think it was the USC game. It was the USC game that I watched where I think in the second half he was really good. And there were a number of plays there where he was kind of showing the late hands, not giving the DB too much time to make a play on the ball. So if you want a kind of jump ball weapon on the boundary, I think he's your guy. I also thought his release package was pretty good. I think he shows a number of different ways to win at the line. The downside to me and the reason he's a little bit lower is I don't think his route technique matches his release skills. He's really high cut. One of the downsides of his size is he's got a real kind of high cut build. So you see when he's trying to make those hard cutting, stopping routes, there's just not quite the sink in his hips. And that's always going to be the case with a bigger guy. But that does, I think, limit his ability to consistently separate in the short and intermediate areas. So he's a role player for me who I think can be very good in a specific role, but he's not a guy I'm going to be asking to do lots of different things.
Okay, and Brian, Mekhi Jackson from Indiana. You want to tell us about him for a little bit?
Yeah, kind of one of my sleeper guys. Where to go? I'm looking at the numbers here. I got him. Yeah, 5'11", 194. Good arm length. So he's another guy that's kind of bounced around a little bit. He started out at small school, St. Francis, and then he transferred to App State. And then he just transferred to Indiana last season. So just kind of a solid all-around guy. Nothing too special about him skill-wise. But again, just a kind of solid all-around guy. He'll good route runner, good hands. Not particularly special as far as like yards after the catch, or he's pretty quick in and out of his breaks, but overall just kind of solid all-around dude. Just good hands, will catch the ball. Not going to give you a lot of yak, but will run the routes, be where he's supposed to be. Can work with the quarterback on scramble drills. Will come back to the quarterback. Has some route releases. Not anything special, but he's got some moves he'll use to get some open. He uses his body, even though he's not a particularly big guy. He uses his body to get open and shield defenders. He's not really a deep threat, but he can just do a little bit of everything. Just could be a solid all-around number 2, probably number 3 receiver in the NFL. But yeah, I think he's a guy who's just going to be kind of a solid all-around guy type of receiver.
Okay, and Jack, I'm glad that you had Nick Harbor on your list. So we covered the South Carolina team, and we had 3 podcasters who I respect a lot, and they all thought that if Nick Harbor doesn't succeed as a wide receiver, we should move him to edge. But Nick Harbor, talk about the football player, and then talk about, do you think his career is going to be better playing football or track? But go ahead, Jack.
I mean, it feels like a bit mean to say that having him at 20 is me bumping him up because of like traits, because he's still at 20. So I think that tells you something about what the tape is like. I think if you're selling yourself on Nick Harbor, I mean, I've seen like some big kind of accounts put him like in the first round of mock drafts, and I'm like, I don't know what you're watching, but it's not the South Carolina tape. So is he
definitely not.
He is a track athlete, as I said earlier, a 10-1 in the 100 meters. So he is, I mean, like Tyreek Hill just ran a 10-1-5. So, I mean, we're talking Tyreek Hill fast, but this guy is 6'5", 235 pounds. So he's huge. And like, I struggle to think of a guy recently who is, I mean, you're maybe talking like, even Kyle Pitts, I don't think had that combination, like that track speed. I mean, he was that big, but he didn't have that track background. Obviously, huge frame, big catch radius. He has that speed as you'd expect for someone with that track background to win deep. But I mean, he's more of an athlete than he is a wide receiver at this point. Right now, he didn't play wide receiver in high school. He played defensive end and tight end. If I'm honest, I think he should have stuck at defensive end, because I don't see it at receiver. Like he's sluggish. Like there's, as you'd expect someone who's new to the position, there's all sorts of technical stuff that's just not there. Like he's constantly false stepping at the line. So despite the fact he's clearly a very good athlete, he doesn't play like it. Like he's not going to scare you off the line. He's sluggish out of his stance. He's not really developed at all as a route runner. Against man, you don't see any real nuance, but even zone, like there are times where you just think, you need to settle, you find the soft spot, and he'll just run himself into coverage, which is incredibly irritating. Now, obviously, the traits are amazing. I don't know whether a position switch now, it's probably too late, right? Because he's a true junior.
Yep.
In an ideal world, like I say, he just stayed at edge. I don't know if he can now make the switch, and I don't know if he wants to. For everything you hear, it's that he wanted to play wide receiver. He wanted to win the Biletnikoff. Like, I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, but there is going to always be, like, a guy with that size and that speed. There is always the what if element, and like that's why he's at 20 for me. Is like, even if he takes like a 30-40% jump this year, like those traits are going to give him abilities that very few other players can match. And so I've kind of got to give him a nod, even if I am quite concerned about where he is as a football player entering his 3rd season.
Jack, I thought you did that really well, because you represented, I think, both sides of the Harbor argument. And other than maybe my initial prompt, I think you covered both sides of the argument there. So I'm happy that we got to talk about him. Brian, I know that you like Ian Strong because you and I have podcasted wide receivers once before, Brian. But
Yep.
tell everybody again, and we have a lot more people watching this time.
Good.
Tell everybody again why they need to be watching Ian Strong from Rutgers.
Yeah, again, like I said earlier, this is a little bit of a projection because he plays for Rutgers, and we all know what that offense was this past season. It's just Kyle Monangai first down, Kyle Monangai second down. A lot of times Kyle Monangai third down. So, but playing on that offense, of course, obviously you got to be able to block. He's a good blocker. Played for Greg Schiano. You got to be able to block. So he's already a good blocker. He's got good size, 6'3", 211. Really long arms. I don't have official measurements on him, but that's at least what he's listed at. Always looking for work in the run game, even, of course, because they run the ball all the time. Of course, looking at his box number, the box number is not great, but of course, like I just said, it was all Kyle Monangai most of the time, so he didn't see a lot of targets his way. So this is a little bit projecting this year because I think they'll try to throw the ball more this year. I think Kaliak Manis, I think he's a little bit of an underrated player. I don't think he's great or anything like that, but I think he's a little bit underrated as far as a college quarterback. I think he can put up better numbers with when they're not giving the ball to Kyle Monangai every down. But so I think his numbers should go up this year. He actually, for a big guy, he has a pretty good outside fake for Ian Strong. He's even showing stutter steps and foot fires. He uses head and shoulders to bobs and fakes. He is long speed's not great. It's kind of questionable. They don't ask him to run a lot of different routes there. But again, it's one of those things, at least for me, that if just because a player doesn't run or only runs, let's say 2, 3, 4 routes in college, doesn't mean he can't run the routes. It's because we all know, a lot of people don't know this, but at least us as scouts or whatever you want to call us, we understand that in college, a lot of times the offense is the offense, and they're going to ask. It's very like a box in a way. Like, okay, this receiver, you're going to run these routes. That's it. Whether you're good at them or not, doesn't matter. You're going to run these routes. If you run these other routes, I don't care. You're going to run these routes. So just because he wasn't asked to run those specific routes doesn't mean he can't run them. So but that's still a question because I haven't seen him do it. But again, like I said, not great speed. So I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to be taking top of a defense, running a lot of post routes and stuff like that. But and he does have. I did notice he has some wasted steps off the snaps. I've noticed it's weird. He'll drop his back foot back, and then he'll take off as far as off the snap. So that's something he's got to cut out. But he knows how to use his body to stack and block out defenders. He what's it called? He knows how to stack defensive backs. Just look at my notes here. He can even be a slot weapon in the NFL. He wasn't used in the slot a lot at Rutgers, but when he played in the slot, he looked pretty good. So I think he can be a guy who can be used more in the slot in the NFL than he was in college. But I think he can do both. And then very good hands. Only had 2 drops this past season. But he should be a good special teams player as a gunner, even though he's not fast. He's big, he's strong, he plays hard, he's willing to get physical. So I think he can be a gunner even early on in his career. His ball tracking could be a little better. A couple of times I noticed he had a little trouble tracking the ball. But again, like I said, he only had the 2 drops, so it's not that bad. But yeah, he was mostly asked to run vertical routes, and then he had occasional crosses and slants, but they didn't have him run like outs or ins or anything like that. So I just would like to see more of that from him. And then just on scramble plays, when he's scrambling, the quarterback scrambling, he needs to be showing a little more awareness. And then his pad level, because he has 6'3", it could be better coming off the line because he's coming up high like that. He's giving up his chest, so it needs to come out lower so he doesn't give up his chest like that. And then he'll throw some. Yeah, he actually his blocking film was actually pretty good. He had a few decleated where he just completely decleated corners. So that was nice. I loved seeing that. I love watching that again. Like Jack, I'm a Packers fan. I'm used to seeing the receivers who blocks. I like watching that. So when you see a receiver decleat a corner, you're like, yes. But yeah, so he's not going to be a big yak guy. He has a little bit of wiggle to him, but not much. He'll wiggle out of a tackle here and there, but not much. But so his upside's not super high, but I think there's upside there to where he could be again a good number 2 / slot power slot kind of like type receiver in the NFL. So I think he's a guy who could really break out this year potentially. He's just a junior, so he could end up staying all 4 years. But at least I think that's a projection for me that he's going to break out this year.
Okay, so at that point, we've covered the 10 unique receivers that Jack had and the 10 unique receivers Brian had, we haven't even covered the top receivers yet. So we're going to pause for a quick commercial, and then we're going to come back and we're going to cover, let's say, their whole list, or give Brian and Jack the opportunity to talk about the players that they like. But Brian, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody watching and let them know how you can find all of your content?
Yeah, of course, you can find me right there, BMAFI NFL on Twitter. I don't call it X. You can find my writing at Gridiron Heroics. I haven't really, because it's summer and I've been busy with other stuff, family stuff, vacations and whatever. I haven't written anything a little bit, but I'm going to start putting out my early top 10s pretty soon for positions, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, all that type of stuff on Gridiron Heroics. And of course, you can find me, like I said, on Twitter. I'll post clips on there. I've been posting clips. Like I said, I was on vacation this last week, so I didn't post anything this last week, but I'll start posting some more clips soon this week, or this coming week, I should say. Trying to think of anything else. I think that's about it for now. Yeah, that's about it. And then, of course, on here every Sunday.
Yep. Jack, welcome to Draft Professor. Would you like to tell everybody who is not familiar with your work, what work you do and where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So I head up NFL draft content for The Touchdown, which is the UK's biggest NFL and college football website. So obviously all my focus is on the draft, which means plenty of summer scouting at this time of year. So the best place to find me is Twitter. Yeah, it is still Twitter. It's never going to be X. And my handle is obviously there. So yeah, keep an eye out. We do a draft guide every year as well there. So that'll be my labor of love for the next season, but I don't have to think about that just yet.
Cool. Well, thank you. Okay, so you can follow the channel at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. It is the same on X as it is on YouTube. And I'll call it X-Witter, so I don't have to worry about X or Twitter. It's just X-Witter. So what you'll see if you follow the channel is daily draft content. We are here 7 days a week. I want to give a shout out to Durst, who's here every Tuesday and Friday. I want to give a shout out to Anthony, who's here every Friday and Saturday. So Draft Professor has 22 people very similar to Brian that show up once a week and help us create a draft podcast a day. And I say they're similar to Brian, but there really is only one Brian. Brian has a database. He's very modest, but Brian's database has official measurements in it now, and the world needs to know about it. So if you need to get measurements, if you need to get 40-yard dash times, you want to follow Brian, you want to engage with Brian. That being said, a couple things that are happening this week. I believe Monday we're covering LSU. Tuesday we're covering Arizona State. Wednesday we're covering Michigan. Thursday we're covering Miami. And then on Friday we're turning around and we're covering 5 quarterbacks. So that's the Draft Professor lineup this week. I think there's going to be a few other podcasts that get sprinkled in. The best thank you can give is to hit that subscribe on YouTube. That is the best way we know that you were here, is just hit that subscribe and you'll be notified for daily draft content. And we've been making daily draft content on this draft cycle since June, but we're just getting started. So you'll see some really good guests coming up with Brian. Ian Cummings and Dalton Miller are coming on in 2 weeks. Devin Jackson and Jacob Infante are also coming on with Brian further on into July. So we definitely have a really good lineup. It's great. Like, I think, Jack, you and I have been talking for probably since December or January, and it was a Sunday podcast where we could make the time zones work. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on. It's been good fun.
Yeah. So from a wide receiver standpoint, let's pivot back to the top of the list. This was the first time with all of the different wide receiver shows we've done where the top 3 wide receivers matched.
That's funny.
So you guys want to each talk about Tyson, Boston, and Williams? Jack, go ahead and kick off whichever one that you like the best.
Yeah, I'll take Tyson first because he is my wide receiver one. So obviously, yeah, Arizona State wide receiver, formerly at Colorado, 6'1", 195. He is, for me, quite comfortably my wide receiver one in this class. I think he does so many of the things that you want an NFL receiver to do. So he is good athlete. You see explosiveness all over his tape. He's a really smart route runner. You see those fakes. You see the variation of tempo. You see him manipulating DBs constantly to get that separation. He's also good after the catch. He's quick. He's got good vision. Now, there is the injury thing. So he had a broken collarbone last year that I saw him miss the game against Texas, and I think he had surgery on that. So there is an element of kind of coming back from that. But he does so many of the things that you want an NFL wide receiver one to do.
Him. Brian, anybody at the top of your list that you want to talk about?
Well, Jack took my guy, Jordan. So, but I would say he does kind of have some Deebo Samuel to him. I think, even though he's not a huge guy, like that physicality with him running the catch. Oh my God, it's nuts! Like him pulling away some of those tackles, guys like hanging onto his jersey and him just pulling away is nuts. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I could talk about my next guy, Denzel Boston, Washington. I think, again, I hate saying this again, but kind of solid all around guy. There's some questions I have about him. I want to see him improve some physical things and I like to see him I don't see a super great speed. I think it's okay. But I think he's just going to be I hate saying this again, but just kind of a solid all around guy. Nothing special about him that stands out per se that I can think offhand right now, but just, solid all around guy. Just could be a number 2 receiver, just, a good solid on the guy. I know I keep saying that. And I also like Antonio Williams. I'll just quick on him, just fast guy, Clemson kind of slot guy. Could probably play some outside, but mostly inside slot guy. Just really good receiver. He'll get yards after the catch. He's quick. He's got all the good stuff going on for him. So, I think that's it. Pretty good.
Okay. So, Jack, feel free to close this out with talking about any of your other guys, and make sure you mention Eric Singleton. He was on both lists, but you were significantly higher on him than Brian, so we should let everybody know why.
Yeah. Let's talk about Singleton. So, formerly of Georgia Tech, now at Auburn, he is in that, like a lot of the guys in my list are, smaller mold. He's 5'10", 178. He is another guy with a track background. He has that long speed to win downfield. He is a high-level athlete that I think shows up on the field consistently. Obviously, that Georgia Tech offense wasn't the most conducive to receiving production, but if you look at his numbers, they were really good in terms of whether it's yards per route run, first downs per route, that kind of thing. Really good burst in and out of his breaks, and more competitive at the catch point than you'd expect for a guy of that size. I think his concentration and his tracking ability are really good, which I think projects really well to a downfield role. Now, the size and the ability to play through contact is probably what's going to lower him for some people. And he hasn't been as productive after the catch as you'd expect. I don't think that's a negative of his game. It's just not been a big part for the kind of archetype that he is. But I think speed kills, as they say, and he's got it. So that's why he's number 4 for me.
Cool. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed seeing the lists. If the players were in common between both lists, those are players I expect us to talk a lot about during the draft cycle. And one of the things at this time of year is finding the differences, so that's what we spent really the first or majority of the podcast doing, is focusing on the differences, because those are probably players that either one person hasn't watched that the other one did, or making sure that the people like Durst and Anthony that are in the chat what we're doing at Draft Professor is making sure that we have eyes on who many of our peers think are the top prospects. So from that standpoint, I hope you enjoyed this. We will be covering wide receivers again on the channel. It may not be Sunday with Brian. You'll just have to find out which of the daily content is covering wide receivers again. But with that being said, we're an hour plus deep into the podcast. For Jack Brentnall, special guest, thank you so much for coming on. For Brian Maafi, for myself, for the 80 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you for watching, everybody. Enjoy your Sunday night, and we'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow.